Adrian Sterling strode across the lobby of Sterling Enterprises, as if he owned the world. No, as if the world had been built to clear a path for his steps. He was tall, polished, flawless, in a dark suit that fit like quiet armor. Each measured footfall echoed through the atrium, a crisp rhythm that made the room breathe differently. Adrian didn't need to speak. His presence arranged the space for him. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. What no one could see beneath the dark wool and steady gait was the wound. 1 year earlier, Mara, his wife, the part of him that warmed the edges, had died in a car accident that the city devoured like gossip and forgot like yesterday's rain. The report was a puzzle with pieces missing. The questions nobody asked sat in the margins like ghosts. People whispered in cocktail corners that fate hadn't worked alone. Adrian never chased the whispers. He told himself it was pointless. He told himself it was grief. The truth was simpler. He was afraid of what he might find. And so the silence stayed, following him room to room like a stubborn shadow. All he had left was Lily, 7 years old, delicate as a snowflake that refused to melt in anyone's hand. Born deaf, she spoke with her fingers, painting thoughts in the air. Adrian hired the best instructors, cleared time for lessons, repeated shapes and movements until his hands hurt. Still, he felt a glass wall between them clear enough to see her, thick enough to keep him out. He watched her drift into the safe stillness of her own world, and nothing in any boardroom had ever made him feel so helpless. That same afternoon, fate stepped onto the scene in scuffed sneakers. Maya Delgado pushed a mop across the lobby, tracing quiet arcs on the marble. 28, hair pulled back fast, a simple blue uniform that turned her into part of the floor plan. But her eyes, large, dark, awake, carried a kind of dignity that didn't ask permission to exist. Most people never noticed her. That was fine. She had bills to pay, a mother to check on, and a city that kept asking for proof that she deserved to be here. The mop handle slid. A slick crescent of water leapt and slapped against Adrian's shoes, the Italian leather he liked because it never argued with him. The splash was small but loud in its audacity. He stopped, looked down, lifted his gaze to the culprit. "Are you blind?" His voice was low and precise, cutting without volume. "You ruined my Italian shoes." Maya flinched. I'm sorry, sir." It slipped, he repeated, as if testing a cheap fabric. "Carelessness is a choice. Do you understand that?" Color rose fast in her cheeks. She reached for napkins clipped to her cart. "I'll clean it." "Of course you will," he snapped. "That's what you're here for." She stilled. Her fingers tightened around the napkins, then loosened. She straightened, not tall, but unbent. "I said I'm sorry," she answered, voice small but steady. "It won't happen again." He stepped closer, a cold front shifting across the floor. For a breath, the lobby shrank to the space between them, his polished disdain, her trembling hands, the thin shine of water on leather. Then his jaw flexed. Something in her eyes, unafraid, unashamed, pushed at him from the inside. He hated that. He turned on his heel. The elevator doors slid open with a silver sigh. Adrian stepped in. The doors began to close. Maya exhaled only when steel kissed steel. She knelt and dabbed the shoe's reflection out of the marble, hands shaking, breath shallow. "Great," she whispered to the empty air. "Pick a billionaire." Any billionaire. A few minutes later, destiny moved another piece. The nanny guided Lily into the lobby. The little girl hopped up onto a bench, legs not quite reaching the floor, sneakers tapping a private rhythm. She watched the world move past in a shiver of suits and lanyards, her eyes bright and far away at the same time. People glanced at her in a way, the way adults do when they don't know what to say to silence. Maya noticed the girl the way tired people notice light, first with surprise, then with gratitude. She set the mop aside and approached softly. "Hey there," she said, then caught herself. Words wouldn't do. She knelt so they were face to face, let her shoulders drop, and breathed once. Her hands rose, careful and clear. "Hello, are you okay?" Lily blinked. Then her fingers answered, small but certain. "Hello, I'm okay. Who are you?" "Maya," she signed. Her smile reached her eyes. "Nice to meet you." Lily's expression warmed. Joy opened like a window. "Nice to meet you, Maya." They talked with their hands. The conversation looked like a dance, hesitant at first, then fluid. Lily signed about her drawings, about the way the lobby ceiling looked like folded ice, about the nanny's bag that squeaked when it moved. Maya listened with her palms and answered with patience, echoing shapes, adding new ones, laughing silently with her eyes when Lily's hands rushed ahead of themselves. The elevator chimed. Adrian stepped out, scrolling past a line of unread messages, then saw the bench. He stopped. His phone lowered without him deciding to lower it. Lily was smiling. At a stranger. He felt it then, a warmth he had trained himself to ignore, spreading across a chest that had stayed armored for too long. His daughter's hands moved quickly. The woman's hands followed, matched, guided. It looked like trust. It looked like sunlight. Adrian swallowed that feeling the way he swallowed good whiskey quickly, before it could do anything reckless. The nanny stood, uncertain. "Mr. Sterling, it's fine," he said. His voice was neutral, but it didn't scrape this time. Maya glanced up, caught his gaze, and stood, smoothing her uniform. "She's wonderful," she said quietly. "Smart. Funny." He didn't answer. He couldn't, not with his heart already admitting too much. He gave a curt nod, the kind that could mean anything, and the moment slipped away like a coin down a grate. Across the lobby, Claudia Sterling had been watching like Omi Mother's can face still, mind racing. She took in everything. The woman in blue on her knees before the little girl. The easy conversation spoken without sound. The way Adrian's face, just for a second, softened. Claudia was not unkind. She had survived by choosing what was best and sticking to it until the world agreed. Sloane Davenport, for example. Beautiful, elegant, flawless in photographs and in person. The city loved her. Investors loved her. Adrian lately seemed to be deciding to love her too. Claudia could see the road that pairing paved. Less mess. Fewer complications, a future with clean lines and approved smiles. And yet here was Lily, glowing in the presence of someone who polished floors for a living. Claudia clasped her handbag tighter. A thought she disliked formed anyway. Sloane has never made Lily smile like that. Lily tugged at Maya's sleeve and signed. "Do you like purple? It's my favorite." Maya answered, "I like purple and blue. Like your sneakers." Lily beamed and wiggled her toes. Adrian cleared his throat. "Lily," he said, and paused, searching for the sign. His hands moved, stilted but sincere. "Time to go with Dad." Lily's eyes softened. She turned to Maya and signed, "Thank you." Maya signed back, "Anytime." Adrian watched the exchange with a face that refused to give itself away. "We're leaving," he said, to the nanny, to the air, to himself. But when he turned, he hesitated. To Maya, "Thank you for your time." It was hers, Maya replied, then immediately wondered if she'd gone too far. "I mean, she did all the work." Something flickered behind his eyes. Amusement? Respect? He extinguished it before it told on him. "Good afternoon." He offered Lily his hand. She took it. As they walked, Lily glanced back once to wave, a small, decisive movement that felt like a promise. Maya watched them go, the way you watch a tide pull back, leaving patterns you can't read yet. She picked up the mop again, but her hand steadied. The lobby looked the same as it had before, glass, marble, the city's hum stitched into its seams, yet something in it had shifted. Not loudly, not for everyone, just enough. Claudia's heels clicked toward the elevator. She pressed the button, eyes still on Maya. Not an enemy, she told herself. A variable. And she didn't like variables. In the chrome reflection of the doors, Claudia saw her own face composed and certain, the way she preferred it. But above her shoulder, the faint outline of a young woman in blue remained present, inconvenient, impossible to ignore. Maya had no idea she had just stepped over a line someone else had drawn. But she had, and the line once crossed does not uncross. From that day on, nothing would be the same. That night, New York glittered as if it had been dusted with gold. The streets around Fifth Avenue pulsed with limousines, paparazzi flashes, and laughter that tried too hard to sound effortless. Above it all, the Metropolitan Gala blazed like a jewel. Its chandeliers spilled light like liquid fire across polished marble. Its staircases carried gowns worth more than entire houses. Businessmen shook hands with politicians. Artists posed beside millionaires, every smile calculated to hide the hunger behind it. For most, the gala was a theater of vanity. For Adrian Sterling, it was a battlefield. And Adrian had never learned how to lose. He entered the grand hall as if it had been built for him. His suit was perfectly tailored, a dark shade that made the white of his shirt almost glow. At his side, Sloane Davenport glided like a vision carved out of glass. She was tall, impossibly slim, every movement precise as if choreographed. A former model, but still walking as though the runway belonged beneath her feet. Her gown of flawless white silk hugged her frame like snow wrapped in moonlight. She had the cold beauty of a Fifth Avenue mannequin and the confidence of a queen who expected every eye to follow. And they did. Adrian Sterling and Sloane Davenport. Someone whispered. Heads turned. Phones discreetly rose. To the newspapers, they were the city's power couple. To Claudia Sterling, they were inevitability. A union between money and beauty, status and security. But in the glittering crowd, unnoticed at first, another figure moved. Maya Delgado. She wore a black uniform that was meant to erase her presence. A plain dress, an apron tied too tight, sensible shoes that squeaked on the marble. Her hair was pinned back hastily, and yet her eyes carried the same quiet fire. By day, she scrubbed Adrian's empire into shine. By night, she carried trays of champagne through ballrooms she would never be invited to enjoy. Fate, with its cruel humor, waited until the moment was sharpest. Maya stepped forward, balancing a tray of champagne flutes. One guest brushed too close, her hand faltered, and a single glass slipped. The golden liquid splashed in an arc across Sloane's white silk gown. Time stuttered. The music seemed to hush. Conversation stilled. Sloane's eyes dropped to the spreading stain, horror twisting her flawless mask. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted her gaze to Maya. "You clumsy little," her voice snapped like glass. Then louder, sharp enough to slice through the silence. "Are you incompetent? People like you don't belong here. You should be scrubbing floors, not serving champagne." A ripple went through the room. Guests exchanged glances, embarrassed, but no one stepped in. Some looked at their shoes. Others pretended sudden fascination with the chandeliers. But everyone heard. Maya's throat tightened. I'm sorry," she stammered, reaching for a napkin. Her hand shook so badly the tray rattled. It was an accident. An accident? Sloane's laugh was cruel, practiced. "Do you have any idea what this dress costs? It's worth more than your yearly salary." "Of course, I suppose that doesn't mean anything to you." Her words fell like blows. Maya's cheeks burned hot. Tears pressed behind her eyes, but she swallowed them down. She bowed her head slightly, but when she looked up again, her eyes weren't broken. They carried shame, yes, but also the same quiet dignity Adrian had seen in the lobby days before. Adrian, standing beside Sloane, turned at last. His eyes found Maya, and something happened he did not expect. Instead of disdain, instead of irritation, his lips curved ever so slightly. A smile not wide, not long, but real. The faintest flicker of warmth in a man who had frozen himself solid. Maya saw it. Across the hall, in the middle of her humiliation, she saw it. And it struck her like lightning brief, searing, unforgettable. Claudia Sterling, a few steps behind, saw it too. Her heart clenched, turning cold with realization. Not because she lacked compassion, but because in that instant she understood. Maya Delgado had just pierced a wall Sloane had never touched. Sloane felt it as well. Her spine stiffened, her fingers tightened on Adrian's arm. She forced a bright smile toward the nearest guests. "Don't worry," she said, her tone now sugary. "Accidents happen." But her eyes, sharp as knives, never left Maya. Maya lowered her gaze, gathering the ruined glass, whispering another apology no one bothered to hear. Around her, the glittering crowd turned away, hungry for the next spectacle. But inside her chest, her heart thundered, not with shame alone, but with the memory of that single impossible smile. Claudia turned her head slightly, watching her son, watching Sloane's brittle mask, watching Maya's trembling hands. A storm was building, and she could feel it. In that hall of light and music, 3 women had quietly drawn their battle lines. Sloane, the flawless model, furious at the threat to her throne. Claudia, the protective mother, suddenly afraid her son's carefully planned future was unraveling. And Maya, the humble cleaner, who had just without meaning to become the center of a war she didn't even know had started. The orchestra swelled again. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed. And no one realized that the true revolution of Adrian Sterling's life had already begun with a single glass of champagne spilled across a perfect white dress. The morning after the gala, the city looked different. The gold shimmer of last night's lights had faded into the gray blue of dawn. But the whispers, the flashes, the glances, they lingered, replaying in Adrian Sterling's mind. Back inside his empire of glass and steel, Sterling Enterprises roared back to life like a well-oiled machine. Assistants darted through corridors balancing tablets and folders. Phones rang with urgency, and meetings piled into his calendar with surgical precision. Deals worth millions were discussed in passing, decided in seconds. Everyone played their part in the dance of power, careful, disciplined, afraid of missteps. And at the center of it all sat Adrian. To them, he looked untouchable, polished, composed, a fortress of iron will. But inside, he was anything but solid. His office towered above Manhattan, its walls lined with modern art, and its glass windows framing the skyline like a painting. Yet the truest treasures weren't on display. Hidden in the top drawer of his mahogany desk lay pieces of a past he could never let go. Old newspaper clippings, yellowed around the edges, each one carrying headlines about Mara's accident. And beside them, a small photograph in a tarnished silver frame. Adrian, Mara, and baby Lily, her tiny hands clutching his finger, Mara's smile radiant. Sometimes, when the office was empty and the world wasn't watching, Adrian would pull out that photograph. His hand would hover over it before finally resting on the glass, tracing the lines of Mara's face, as if touching her in that frozen moment could bring her back. "Why did you leave me, Mara?" he whispered once, his voice cracking in the silence. Or, "Did someone take you from me?" The reports had called it fate, an unavoidable accident. But he knew, deep inside, in the place he never dared to speak aloud, he knew something wasn't right. The unanswered questions haunted him more than the absence itself. Fear and pride kept him from pulling at the thread. For if he did, what truth might unravel? Meanwhile, life demanded its weight from others, too. That morning, Maya Delgado tied her blue uniform around her waist and returned to her battles. The buckets, the mop, the endless glass that reflected everyone's wealth, but never her own. By night she wore black, carrying trays of champagne through ballrooms that glittered with excess. Her body carried exhaustion, her eyes carried sorrow. Yet, somehow, a softness always remained, like a candle that refused to be blown out. Later that day, Claudia Sterling arrived at her son's office. As she waited, she found Lily in the lobby, bent over a sketch pad. Crayons rolled across the model as the girl focused, her small hands shaping worlds in color. What startled Claudia was not the drawing, but the young woman sitting beside her. Maya. There was nothing rehearsed about it. Maya had simply sat down, tilting her head toward Lily with patience, her hands moving in graceful signs. "What are you drawing?" she asked with a smile. Lily looked up, hesitant at first. Then her fingers danced in return. "A story." "What kind of story?" Maya signed back gently. "A happy one," Lily replied, her little smile breaking through. Claudia froze, her breath catching. Her granddaughter, so often withdrawn into silence, was laughing softly, nodding, even pointing at the colors she had chosen. Her joy looked effortless, natural. And it was Maya who had unlocked it. Claudia's chest tightened. This girl, this cleaner, she has something Sloane has never had. But almost immediately, fear pulled her back. Fear of what such closeness could mean. Fear that Maya could derail the carefully chosen future she believed was best for her son. Adrian's world was meant to be stable, untouchable. And Sloane, beautiful and admired, was a piece that fit the Sterling legacy. Maya? She was an intruder, a threat to that vision. And while Claudia wrestled with that unease, across the city a darker game was unfolding. In a luxury hotel suite, far from the flashing cameras of the gala, two figures sat across from each other. The curtains were drawn, the air thick with expensive cologne and the sharp tang of red wine. Sloane Davenport. To the world, she was Adrian's perfect match. To the press, the inevitable Mrs. Sterling. But in this room, stripped of her polished smile, her eyes gleamed with something colder. Not love, not devotion, ambition. Opposite her sat Victor Harrington, Adrian's rival. His shadow. Where Adrian conquered, Victor failed. Where Adrian was praised, Victor was overlooked. That comparison had hollowed him out, filled him with venom, until he was no longer just a businessman, but a man hungry for destruction. Victor leaned back in his chair, smirking as he swirled the wine in his glass. "This is it, Sloane," he said, "the chance I've been waiting for. Sterling thinks he's untouchable, but every empire falls. And he won't see this one coming." Sloane crossed her legs elegantly, her tone smooth as ice. "He trusts me. That's his weakness. And when he signs the papers, it will already be too late." "Good girl," Victor sneered, raising his glass. "You'll get the glory. I'll take his empire. Together, we bury Adrian Sterling." Sloane's lips curled into a cold smile. "He thinks I love him, but I only love power. And soon, everything he's built will be ours." They clinked glasses, their toasts ringing like a quiet death knell. There was no affection in that suite. No warmth, only vanity, vengeance, and the hunger to ruin a man already drowning in grief. And while Adrian stared at his daughter's drawings, wondering how to bridge the silence between them, while Claudia wrestled with the fear of Maya's growing presence, the trap was already closing. Destiny, relentless and cruel, had chosen its pawn. And Maya, Delgado, the humble cleaner who never asked for war, was about to step onto the board in a game that could shatter or save them all. On the top floor of Sterling Enterprises, the air itself seemed to hum with authority. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a corridor polished like a mirror, its silence almost intimidating. Here, every inch was designed to impress and to remind. This was no ordinary company. This was an empire. The glass walls reflected the endless Manhattan sky, while sleek furniture gleamed beneath the sharp glow of recessed lights. Only the most trusted executives, powerful directors, and carefully chosen guests ever set foot on this floor. For Maya Delgado, it was foreign territory. That morning, her supervisor had handed her a tray and a brisk order. Executive conference room. Coffee? Water? Don't spill a drop. Her breath caught. She had spent years mopping lobbies and dusting corners, but she had never been summoned this high. Her palms were already damp as she adjusted the tray in her hands. What am I doing here? She thought. Every step felt heavier, as if she were carrying not cups and glasses, but the weight of 1,000 eyes ready to judge her. Inside the conference room, Adrian Sterling sat at the head of the table. His posture was carved from steel, his dark suit crisp, his attention locked on the folder in front of him. Sloane Davenport, luminous as always, sat at his side. Her white suit dress shimmered under the lights, her presence as carefully polished as her diamond earrings. She leaned casually toward him, as though she already belonged in both his private life and his empire. "Darling," she purred softly, her voice smooth as silk, "this deal will secure Sterling Enterprises for decades." Imagine the expansion, the prestige. Adrian didn't lift his eyes from the pages. His jaw tightened. And yet, "Every word feels like a minefield," he murmured. Sloane's smile didn't falter, though her fingers clenched slightly on the table. "You're overthinking. Trust me. This is opportunity knocking." It was in this atmosphere of tension that Maya entered. She kept her gaze low, her footsteps quick and light. Placing the tray carefully on the table, she set a cup of coffee before Adrian. Then, with trembling hands, she lifted the crystal pitcher and tilted it over the glasses. That was when fate intervened. Her hand shook. A thin stream slipped sideways, dripping onto the pristine folder. Her breath stopped. The sound of liquid against paper was louder than any shout. I'm so sorry," Maya whispered, scrambling for napkins. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she dabbed furiously at the pages. Her heart pounded in her ears. "This is it. They'll fire me. They'll humiliate me in front of everyone." Sloane's voice sliced through the silence. "Unbelievable," she hissed. "Can't even pour water without ruining something?" Maya froze, eyes stinging, but Adrian raised a hand slightly. "Enough, Sloane." His voice was low, controlled. For a second, Sloane faltered, then smoothed her tone. "I only mean, mistakes like this don't happen up here. This is the executive floor." But Adrian's eyes were no longer on either of them. They were on the folder. As Maya dabbed at the wet pages, faint letters emerged beneath the moisture. Clauses written in smaller type, almost invisible before, now bled faintly through the ink. Adrian leaned forward, his sharp gaze narrowing. "What's this?" he muttered. The lines revealed their secrets. Clauses about the transfer of assets, delayed deadlines, dilution of control. Carefully concealed traps, written to appear harmless, but designed to bleed power from him little by little. A man who trusted too easily would never notice, until it was too late. Adrian closed the folder slowly, his face a mask of indifference. But beneath the surface, his instincts burned. Someone had tried to outmaneuver him. "Leave it," he said at last, his voice calm, unreadable. Maya's fingers trembled as she gathered the tray. She couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," she whispered, before fleeing the room. The doors closed behind her, leaving only Adrian and Sloane. Sloane leaned closer, her tone sweet again. "She's just a cleaner, Adrian. Forget the mess. Let's focus on what matters, our future." But Adrian didn't answer. His thumb traced the damp corner of the folder. His silence was heavier than words. That night, in his penthouse high above the city, Adrian spread the papers out again. Alone, with only the hum of Manhattan beneath his windows, he read line after line. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. "This isn't a deal," he whispered to himself. "It's a noose." His reflection stared back at him from the glass wall. A man who had built an empire, now standing at the edge of a trap. Outside, the city glittered like a sky full of stars, but inside, shadows grew. Doubt pressed against him, whispering that his empire, his legacy, even his daughter's future were under siege. And he owed the revelation to a young woman who had simply spilled water on his table. Maya thought she had committed an unforgivable mistake. But in truth, she had handed Adrian Sterling his first weapon in a war he didn't yet know he was fighting. After the accident with the contract, Maya could hardly lift her head. She hurried down the polished corridor, clutching the tray as though it might shield her from the humiliation burning her cheeks. The sting of Sloane's sharp words still echoed in her ears. In her mind, Adrian Sterling's silence had sealed her fate. "He'll never forget this," she whispered to herself later that night as she scrubbed her uniform clean. "One mistake, and I'm done." But what she didn't know was that her mistake had carved a small crack into the armor of the untouchable billionaire. Behind Adrian's cold eyes, a question had formed, a dangerous one. For the first time, he began to doubt the glittering promises Sloane wrapped around him. Maya, of course, had no idea. For her, life was the same relentless struggle. Mornings filled with scrubbing, polishing, mopping. Nights weighed down with trays of champagne. Endless footsteps across marble floors. Her body ached, her spirit faltered, yet she kept going because survival didn't wait for weakness. And then came the rainy night. Thunder rolled low over Manhattan, rain streaking the glass towers like tears. The storm pressed against the city, soaking the streets and blurring the lights. Maya, dressed in her plain black uniform, entered Sterling Enterprises once more, this time summoned to serve at an exclusive cocktail party on the upper floors. The atmosphere was different here, quieter, more dangerous. The corridors gleamed like rivers of glass, and the air carried the faint notes of violins mixed with expensive perfume. Balancing a tray heavy with crystal glasses, Maya told herself the same prayer she always did. Just don't be seen. But destiny had no intention of letting her hide. As she passed one of the closed conference rooms, a sound slipped through the air. Voices. The door was ajar, just enough for words to escape. Maya's breath caught. She froze, every muscle screaming for her to keep moving, yet her feet rooted to the ground. Then came the voice, smooth, sharp, unmistakable. Sloane Davenport. "He still hasn't signed," Sloane hissed into the phone, pacing inside the room. The impatience in her tone carried like claws against glass. "It has to happen. Everything we've risked, everything. It has to be worth it." Maya's pulse raced. She pressed her back against the wall, her heart thundering in her chest. One wrong sound, one accidental clink of her tray, and she would be discovered. Inside, Sloane's voice dropped lower, venom lacing every word. "Adrian doesn't know. He'll never know. And Mara." A pause, sharp as lightning. Mara's accident wasn't in vain. It had to be done. It was necessary. The name hit Maya like a blade. Mara. Her hands trembled so violently the glasses on her tray rattled. Her vision swam as the meaning sank in. Mara's death, Adrian's wife, Lily's mother hadn't been chance. It hadn't been fate. Someone had wanted it. No. Maya mouthed silently, her knees weakening. It can't be true. But every word from Sloane confirmed it. "Yes," Sloane said coldly, as if answering Maya's unspoken plea. "Without her, Adrian is mine. The empire is mine. It was all worth it." Maya's breath stopped. The world around her seemed to collapse in suffocating silence. What do I do? Who would believe me? She knew the answer. No one. Without proof, she was nothing but a cleaner with a wild story. If she spoke, they would laugh. Or worse, Sloane would find a way to destroy her. With shallow, panicked breaths, Maya stumbled back down the corridor. The tray shook in her grip, but she clutched it tight, forcing her steps to stay silent. She didn't just carry glasses anymore. She carried a secret heavy enough to shatter Adrian Sterling's world. That night, back in her tiny apartment with peeling paint and leaky pipes, Maya lay wide awake. The storm outside had moved on, but inside her chest, it raged louder than ever. The words played again and again in her mind, like a curse she couldn't escape. Mara's accident wasn't in vain. It was necessary. She curled against her pillow, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The truth, or what she believed now to be the truth, had chosen her as its unwilling keeper. And from that night on, Maya Delgado was no longer just a cleaner. She was the only soul alive who knew that Mara Sterling's death had not been fate, but murder. The days that followed dragged like chains for Maya. From the outside, nothing had changed. She still wore her blue uniform every morning, her hands raw from scrubbing floors and polishing glass. By evening, she slipped into her plain black dress, balancing trays while ignoring the ache in her back and the throbbing in her feet. But inside her mind, everything was different. The secret she carried pressed on her chest like an invisible stone. No one else could see it. No one else could hear the words she replayed every night, but they haunted her with every breath. Mara's accident wasn't in vain. It was necessary. Sometimes, in the middle of sweeping a hallway or polishing a railing, her hands would stop. She would hear Sloane's venomous tone echoing in her head, and her stomach would twist until she thought she might be sick. She wanted to scream it out, to tell someone, to free herself of the curse she had overheard. But who would believe her? She was nothing more than a cleaner. Meanwhile, Claudia Sterling had begun to pay closer attention to the currents swirling around her son and granddaughter. Adrian seemed restless. His silences were longer, his brow furrowed deeper, his temper shorter. He carried the air of a man haunted by shadows he refused to name. And Lily, sweet Lily, continued to drift toward Maya like a flower leaning toward the sun. Every time they crossed paths, the little girl's face lit up. Her tiny hands moved rapidly in signs, her eyes sparkling with a joy that Claudia hadn't seen since Mara's death. Claudia watched this with conflicted eyes. Relief warmed her heart, seeing her granddaughter smile again. But fear chilled her just as quickly. What if this bond, this unexpected closeness, pulled Adrian away from the life Claudia envisioned for him? A life of stability, a life with Sloane Davenport. She told herself it was for the best. That Sloane, with her elegance, her status, her flawless image, was the right match. But when she saw Lily laughing with Maya, the certainty wavered. It was in this fog of doubt and fear that Maya finally made a choice. She could no longer bear the silence. The secret was poisoning her. And if she could not tell Adrian, not without proof, not with the risk of being cast aside, then she would tell Claudia. The woman was strong, respected, and knew Adrian's heart better than anyone else. Maybe she could help. The opportunity came by chance. One afternoon, Maya was carrying a small tray down the hushed corridors of the executive floor when she saw Claudia alone, waiting for her son. The sight made Maya's pulse quicken. Her palms grew damp. Now or never. She stepped closer, her shoes barely making a sound on the polished floor. "Mrs. Sterling," she said softly, her voice trembling. Claudia turned, her posture straight, her gaze sharp, as always. "Maya." The single word carried both acknowledgement and caution. "What is it?" Maya's throat tightened. She clutched the tray like a lifeline. I need to tell you something. Something I shouldn't know. But I can't keep it inside anymore." Claudia's eyes narrowed slightly, stunning her. "Go on." Maya hesitated. Then the words tumbled out, broken by fear. "I heard I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. Miss Davenport Sloane, she was on the phone. She spoke about the contract Adrian hasn't signed. And then Maya's voice cracked, her eyes filling with tears. She mentioned Mara. She said, Mara's accident wasn't an accident at all. The silence that followed was suffocating. Claudia's face remained still, but inside, her heart clenched. Maya shook her head, choking on her words. I don't have proof. Only what I heard. But it won't leave my mind. And if it's true, then everything you love is in danger. Claudia turned away, walking a few paces down the corridor. Her hands trembled, though she hid them at her sides. For years, she had buried her own doubts about Mara's death. Whispers in her heart that told her something didn't add up. She had never voiced them, not even to Adrian. To do so would have been to reopen wounds too raw, to risk breaking her son's fragile heart. But now, hearing the same suspicion spoken by this humble young woman, her doubts returned with crushing force. What moved her most wasn't the words themselves, but the way Maya spoke. There was no angle, no hunger for power, no gain to be made. Only fear, only compassion. And an honesty so raw it pierced through Claudia's defenses. She looked back at Maya, and for the first time, she did not see a cleaner. She did not see a threat. She saw a young woman who might be the key, not only to Adrian's future, but to his very survival. Claudia's voice was low, steady, but her eyes betrayed the storm within. Maya, do not repeat this to anyone. Not yet. Do you understand me? Maya nodded quickly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I understand. Claudia stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against Maya's arm in a gesture both commanding and tender. You may have just placed yourself in great danger. If what you say is true, we are all at risk. For a moment, their eyes met, one filled with the wisdom and fear of a mother, the other with the trembling courage of a young woman who had dared to speak the truth. And in that instant, a silent alliance was born. After her conversation with Claudia, Maya began to live between two worlds. On one side, there was the world she had always known, the routine of a woman who had no choice but to keep moving. She woke before dawn in her cramped apartment, the wallpaper peeling, the leaky faucet dripping through the night. Her first task was always her mother. Age and illness had stolen much of the older woman's strength, and Maya cared for her tenderly, brushing her hair, preparing a modest breakfast, making sure the medicine was laid out properly. It was a ritual of love, one that anchored Maya even as the rest of her life spun in chaos. Then she would hurry across the city, swallowed by the rush of New York mornings, to step into the gleaming world of Sterling Enterprises. There, dressed in her faded blue uniform, she became invisible, scrubbing floors that reflected the shine of others' shoes, polishing glass walls that looked out over a skyline she could never touch, carrying the weight of labor no one acknowledged. And yet, there was another world inside her, one she had not chosen, a world of secrets, of words she could never repeat aloud. Sloane's voice haunted her. The sharp, icy tone, the way she had spoken Mara's name like it was nothing more than a tool, a casualty. Mara's accident wasn't in vain. It was necessary. Those words poisoned Maya's nights. She woke in the dark, heart racing, her hands gripping the sheets as if she could squeeze the memory out of existence. But it remained. It wasn't her imagination. It was an invention. It was truth, or at least the shadow of truth, and now it lived inside her like a second heartbeat. How can I prove it? She whispered to herself, staring at the ceiling of her small bedroom. How can I make a man like Adrian Sterling believe me? Everywhere she turned, she searched for answers. Her sharp eyes, trained by years of noticing what others ignored, began to see patterns. Whispered phone calls that ended too quickly when footsteps approached. Documents carried from one office to another that later disappeared entirely. Glances exchanged between directors, heavy with tension, their mouths silent but their eyes betraying knowledge too dangerous to speak aloud. Alone, Each fragment meant nothing, but together they formed a mosaic of unease, a picture that only Maya seemed willing to see. Adrian, on his side of the world, was equally restless. By day, he wore his mask of power. Meetings, signatures, handshakes, the facade of a man in control. But at night, when the city glittered like diamonds beneath his penthouse windows, the mask cracked. He spread contracts across his desk, page after page, each one a potential trap. He compared signatures, checked dates, reread clauses until the words blurred into nonsense. And yet, with every line, his instincts screamed louder. Sloan had brought him poison disguised as opportunity. Still, he told no one. He didn't go to his lawyers. He didn't call his board of directors. He didn't even confide in his mother. The reason was simple and cruel: shame. Adrian Sterling, the man celebrated as an unbeatable strategist, had been deceived. And not by a rival across the table, but by the woman the world believed would soon be his wife. To admit that betrayal was to admit weakness, and Adrian's pride couldn't bear it. "Sterlings don't get played," he muttered one night, staring into the mirror. But even as he said it, he saw the doubt in his own eyes. What tormented him most, however, wasn't the paperwork. It was Mara. Her death clawed at him like an old wound torn open. He remembered the crash too well. The phone call in the middle of the night, the headlines the next morning, the way Lily had cried without understanding why her mother would never come home. It had always seemed too sudden, too clean, too convenient. He had pushed those thoughts away for years, afraid that the truth might destroy what was left of him. But now the doubts grew wild, feeding on his every suspicion. Claudia saw it all. She was a woman who noticed more than she ever said. She watched the hardening lines of her son's face, the way his gaze lingered on Sloan with suspicion instead of admiration. She said nothing. She carried Maya's confession like a secret stone in her chest, knowing the time wasn't right to reveal it. But she was afraid of what would happen if the truth stayed buried, afraid of what might happen if it came out too soon. And Maya tried to be brave. Each night, after caring for her mother, she sat in the dim light of her room with a notebook on her lap. Its cover was bent, its pages worn, but it became her only weapon. She scribbled every phrase she remembered, every detail. Contract not signed. Everything must be worth it. Mara. Not in vain. She wrote them again and again, as if repetition could turn fragments into proof. Tears smudged the ink, but she didn't stop. "I can't let them erase her," she whispered. "Mara deserves the truth, and so destiny played its cruel game." Each of them carried only pieces of the puzzle. Maya had the words. Claudia had the intuition. Adrian had the suspicions. They didn't know it yet, but soon those fragments would converge. And when they did, the truth would no longer be a whisper in the dark. It would be a storm one powerful enough to destroy them all, or finally set them free. The atmosphere inside Sterling Enterprises had begun to change. For years, the company had thrived on a rhythm as precise as clockwork. Meetings scheduled to the second, memos sent like gospel, an empire of glass and steel that reflected the calm assurance of its leader. But now, that rhythm faltered. It wasn't chaos, not yet. It was something subtler, heavier, a silence that clung to the walls, a tension that seeped through the corridors like an invisible fog. Employees noticed it. Assistants whispered that Adrian Sterling no longer smiled at victories in the boardroom. Directors exchanged uneasy glances when his questions grew sharper, his patience shorter. To the world outside, Adrian was the same, a fortress of composure, the embodiment of control. But inside Sterling Enterprises, those closest to him felt the change, and no one felt it more than Sloan Davenport. At first, she told herself it was nothing. Adrian was simply busy, distracted. But as the days passed, she saw it clearly. His silence wasn't distance. It was suspicion. His gaze lingered on documents longer than before. His hand lingered in hesitation before signing. And worst of all, he no longer looked at her with the same unwavering trust. That cursed contract had poisoned everything. Sloane's smile grew tighter with each passing day. Her gestures, once fluid with confidence, stiffened under the strain of keeping up appearances. Beneath her icy grace, fury swelled. She was losing ground. She could feel it. And Sloane Davenport was not a woman who accepted loss. Her eyes soon found the cause of her unease. Maya Delgado. The girl had appeared from nowhere, a shadow in a blue uniform. And yet somehow she was everywhere. In the lobby at dawn, in the corridors by noon, at evening events with a tray in her hands. To most, she was invisible. But not to Lily. The little girl's face lit up whenever Maya appeared, her tiny hands flying with signs, her laughter silent but radiant. And Adrian noticed it too. He didn't show it, but Sloane could see the flicker of warmth in his eyes whenever Lily smiled at Maya. It was intolerable. To Sloane, Maya was not just a cleaner. She was a crack in the perfect image Sloane had spent years cultivating. She was a living reminder that love and trust could not be bought with status, beauty, or diamonds. Maya represented something raw, something real, and that was something Sloane could never compete with. And in Sloane's world, threats weren't tolerated. They were erased. The traps began subtly. One morning, Maya arrived at work, only to find her schedule had changed without notice. She was assigned to clean floors alone, a task meant for a team. She worked until her arms ached, sweat dripping down her back, but she finished. Another day, her supervisor handed her a stack of tasks so heavy it was impossible to complete in one shift. "Orders from above," he muttered apologetically, though his eyes avoided hers. Soon after, whispers began to follow her. Rumors she was careless, that she had broken a vase in one of the executive offices, that she had pocketed tips at an event. Lies, planted like poison. Maya felt the walls closing in. Each night, in the dim light of her small apartment, she cried silently, careful not to wake her mother. The exhaustion, the humiliation, the fear, they all pressed against her chest like iron. But each time she remembered Lily's bright eyes, the way the little girl ran into her arms and signed friend with her small hands, Maya found strength to rise again the next morning. Adrian noticed pieces of this puzzle, though he didn't yet understand it. He saw Maya more often than coincidence should allow. He saw her wiping her brow, exhausted, yet still pausing to kneel beside Lily and sign a small story or teach a new word. He saw her retreating with trembling hands when supervisors barked orders at her, though she never complained. Something inside him stirred. The man who had built an empire on control recognized the injustice, though pride kept him from acting. One evening, Adrian passed her in the corridor. She bowed her head, clutching a mop like a shield, but he stopped. "Are they overworking you?" he asked, his voice low, almost reluctant. Maya froze, stunned that he had spoken. I'm fine, mister." "Sterling," she whispered, her eyes lowering. His jaw tightened. That wasn't the question. She hesitated, then shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Work is work." Before he could answer, Sloane's heels clicked down the corridor. She slipped her arm through his with a smile polished for display. "Darling, the car is waiting." Adrian's expression hardened again, the warmth gone. He gave Maya a brief nod and walked away, leaving her clutching the mop tighter, as though it were the only thing holding her upright. Claudia watched from afar, her keen eyes sharper than either of them realized. She no longer saw Maya as a threat, but as a lifeline for Lily, perhaps even for Adrian. She could sense the strength beneath the young woman's exhaustion, a quiet dignity that no cruelty could erase. She compared it silently to Sloane's brittle beauty, her perfect but hollow image. The difference chilled her. The board was set. On one side, Sloane, her patience worn thin, her fury growing sharper, her willingness to destroy limitless. On the other, Maya, unwillingly caught in a war she had never chosen, fighting not with weapons, but with resilience, faith, and dignity. And at the center, Adrian Sterling, torn between the ghosts of his past, the doubts of his present, and the storm he didn't yet realize was about to break. The greatest blow had not yet come, but it was close, closer than any of them could see. The days moved forward, and the tension thickened like a storm brewing silently on the horizon. Adrian Sterling grew more withdrawn with each sunrise. Locked behind the glass walls of his office, he buried himself in documents, contracts, and private notes. Assistants whispered that he barely spoke anymore, that his temper simmered close to the surface. To most, he seemed simply more serious than usual. But those who knew him best, Claudia, and even Sloane, understood something was unraveling inside him. Sloane, for her part, grew restless. Her patience, already stretched thin, snapped further each time she saw Adrian close his office door without her. Each time she noticed his gaze skimming over her too carefully, too cautiously. She felt her power slipping, and with it, her mask of serenity began to crack. Maya, meanwhile, fought her own battles. The traps laid in her path had not vanished. Her shifts grew longer, her tasks heavier, the whispers more vicious. Yet she endured, head held high, fueled only by quiet resilience and the fleeting joy of Lily's smile. And Lily, sweet Lily, remained untouched by adult wars. She carried in her silence the purity of childhood, and within that innocence lay truths no one else dared to see. That afternoon seemed ordinary. The sun poured golden light through the tall windows of Sterling Enterprises. In the waiting lounge outside Adrian's office, Lily sat at a low table, her tiny body bent over a piece of paper, colored pencils scattered around her like a halo. Maya had been asked to keep her company while Adrian attended a closed-door meeting. Grateful for the reprieve from harsher tasks, she sat beside the girl, quietly watching. Lily's hands moved quickly, smudges of green and red filling the page. A crooked house, a slanted car, two stick figures drawn near a street. Maya tilted her head, smiling softly. "That's beautiful, Lily," she whispered, though she knew words meant little. Her hands rose instead, shaping signs carefully. "You like drawing today?" Lily beamed and signed back eagerly. "Yes, this car. It looks like the one from that night." Maya's smile faltered. "What night?" She signed gently. The girl's expression grew thoughtful. Her small hands moved with childlike precision. "The night Mommy didn't come home." Maya's breath caught. She didn't interrupt. She only nodded, encouraging Lily to continue. The little girl lifted her fingers again. "I saw Mommy. She was angry. She was talking to someone." Lily's brow furrowed as she mimicked gestures of two people facing each other, one raising hands in frustration. Then, with innocent certainty, Lily repeated a gesture Maya knew instantly. A sign she had seen countless times, the one Lily always used for Sloane. Maya's world seemed to shatter. Her throat tightened as her heart pounded in her chest. Lily had just revealed what no one else dared imagine. On the night of the crash, she had seen her mother arguing with Sloane. Maya swallowed hard, trying to keep her hand steady as she responded. "Are you sure, Lily? Was it her?" The little girl nodded without hesitation. "Yes, her." Then she went back to coloring, blissfully unaware of the weight of her revelation. Maya sat frozen. Her mind raced. How could a child's memory, delivered through delicate hands, hold such devastating truth? How could she present this to Adrian or anyone without being dismissed as clinging to fantasies? Her chest ached with the burden of it. Moments later, the office doors opened. Adrian stepped out, shoulders stiff, his face unreadable. He glanced at his daughter's drawing as he passed. "Another car, Lily?" he asked, his voice softening for her. "That's a nice one." To him, it was nothing unusual, just another sketch, another innocent pastime. But Claudia, who had been standing quietly at the far end of the room, saw more. She had caught Lily's signing, had seen Maya's startled reaction, and in her gut, she knew. Her heart sank, yet her suspicion hardened into certainty. The past was not buried. Mara's death had not been chance. And the truth, unthinkable and dangerous, had begun to rise from the smallest, purest witness, a child incapable of lies. That night, Manhattan glowed beneath a mist of rain, the city lights reflecting on slick streets like veins of molten gold. The luxury hotel where Maya had been sent to work was a place she had only ever passed from a distance, staring in awe at the polished glass and the doorman who opened doors only for the wealthy. Now, dressed in her plain black uniform, she entered through the service entrance, blending into a world meant to remain invisible. Her body ached from the day's earlier shift, but she pushed herself forward. Rent was due, and her mother's medicine was running low. There was no room for weakness. The hotel's private restaurant occupied the top floor, known for its secluded dining rooms where the powerful could plot behind closed doors. Walls padded with velvet, chandeliers dripping with crystal, carpets soft enough to silence even the heaviest footsteps. Every detail screamed exclusivity. Maya had been assigned to that section. Her hands shook slightly as she set a table, folding napkins with mechanical precision. She whispered to herself, as she often did when nerves threatened to undo her. Just finish the shift. Maya, one more night, one more battle. And then she froze. Voices, familiar voices. From the room next door, muffled by heavy curtains but unmistakable, came the sharp tone of Sloane Davenport and the deep, self-assured voice of Victor Harrington. Maya's stomach twisted. Instinct screamed at her to leave, to pretend she had heard nothing. But something stronger took hold, a force that had guided her since the moment she glimpsed the truth. Her breath shallow, she slipped into a side room. On a small table lay a tall arrangement of white lily. Moving quickly, she pulled out her battered phone and set it down behind the flowers, the camera facing the gap between curtain and door. "Please," she prayed silently, "let this work." Inside, the conversation was clear enough to catch. Victor's voice carried the arrogance of a man savoring victory. "You should have seen it, Sloane." The look on their faces when the news broke. Tragic, they called it. But we know better, don't we? Sloane's reply was colder than ice. Tragedy is only a word for the weak. Mara's death cleared the path. Without her, Adrian is mine. His empire is within reach. Maya pressed her trembling hands to her chest, her heart hammering so loudly she feared it would give her away. Victor laughed, low and cruel. It was easier than anyone imagined. A little work on the brakes, a few wires tampered with her car, was doomed before she even turned the key. My driver did his part well. And the beauty of it? Everyone believes it was fate. Maya bit her lip until she tasted blood. The truth, horrific, undeniable, was spilling out like poison, and she was the only one to catch it. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, silence fell inside. Maya crept back toward the table, her eyes fixed on the hidden phone. Her hand reached out, and fate betrayed her. Her elbow brushed against a crystal glass perched on the edge of the table. The crash of shattering crystal pierced the air like a gunshot. The door slammed open. Sloane appeared, eyes blazing, her beauty twisted into fury. "You!" she hissed. Maya lunged for the phone, but Sloane was faster. With the strength of desperation, she ripped it from Maya's grip and smashed it against the polished floor. The device exploded in pieces, sparks of plastic and glass scattering across the carpet. "No!" Maya cried, dropping to her knees, her hands scrambling over the shards. Victor stepped out behind Sloane, his smile as venomous as a snake's. Curious little mouse, he sneered. Spying where she doesn't belong. Maya's throat tightened with terror. Without another word, she bolted. Down the service corridor, her shoes slapped against the linoleum, her breath ragged as tears blurred her vision. She ran until her legs threatened to give way, carrying nothing but despair. The next morning, pale and hollow-eyed, she stood in front of Adrian Sterling's office. When he finally appeared, tall and imposing in his flawless suit, Maya forced herself to speak. Her voice cracked, but she told him everything, every word she had heard, every detail of Victor's boast, every venomous phrase from Sloane's mouth. Adrian's expression hardened. His jaw clenched, his hands tightened into fists at his sides. For a moment, hope flickered in Maya's chest, but then his eyes darkened. "Do you have proof?" he demanded. Maya's lips trembled. "They destroyed my phone. But Adrian, I heard them. I swear it on my life." His face turned cold, like marble. "Do you expect me to destroy the reputation of my fiancée of Sloane Davenport on the word of a cleaning girl?" The words cut deeper than any blade. Maya's knees weakened. She tried again, her hands clasped desperately. "Please, you have to believe me. For Mara, for Lily. Enough." Adrian's voice thundered through the office. "If you value your job, your safety, you'll stop this nonsense now." Maya's chest collapsed. Tears welled, but she swallowed them back. Without another word, she turned and left, the door closing like a final sentence behind her. But Maya was not done. That evening, she gathered the shattered remains of her phone, clutching them like fragile bones of hope. She carried them to a small repair shop in a forgotten corner of the city. The technician, an older man with gentle eyes, listened as she explained, her voice shaking. He studied the pieces, then nodded slowly. "It won't be easy, but let me try." Hours crawled by. Finally, the man emerged, holding out the battered device. "It's damaged, but part of the recording survived." Maya's fingers shook as she pressed play, and there it was. Victor's voice, chillingly clear. A little work on the brakes, a few wires tampered with her car was doomed before she even turned the key. Maya's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. Proof. Real proof. She knew Adrian would never believe her again. Not now, but Claudia might. With trembling determination, she sent the video to Claudia Sterling. That night, Claudia sat in her grand townhouse, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating her face. She pressed play. Her lips trembled as Victor's voice filled the silence. The color drained from her cheeks. The doubts she had buried for years roared back with brutal clarity. Mara's death had not been fate. It had been murder. Claudia set the phone down, her hands trembling. For a long moment, she could not breathe. Then, with quiet resolve, she whispered to herself, "No more lies. It's time the truth comes out." And in that instant, Claudia Sterling chose war. Claudia Sterling couldn't sleep that night. She sat by the window of her townhouse, the city stretching endlessly below, but she barely saw it. Her hands clutched her phone, and the recovered video played again and again, each word a dagger reopening old wounds. Victor's voice, arrogant and cruel, filled the silence. A little work on the brakes. A few wires tampered with her car was doomed before she even turned the key. And then Sloane's icy tone. Mara's death cleared the path. Without her, Adrian is mine. The empire will follow. Claudia closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She had feared this truth for years, had buried her suspicions deep inside to protect her son. But now, she could no longer deny it. Mara had not died by chance. She had been murdered, her life stolen by greed and ambition. In the stillness of the night, Claudia made her decision. She would not allow this lie, this venomous woman, to destroy her son's life any longer. The next evening, she arranged a meeting with Sloane Davenport. Her voice over the phone was calm, even polite, as if it were just another conversation. But when she ended the call, her hands trembled. Quietly, she sent a single message to Adrian. Come to the rooftop. Say nothing. Just watch. The rooftop of the luxury hotel was nearly empty, the city lights burning like a sea of fire below. The wind howled across the terrace, sharp and cold, carrying with it the weight of judgment. Sloane arrived, dressed impeccably in white, her hair flowing like silk, her lips curved in the kind of smile that had fooled the world. Claudia, she greeted, her tone sweet. So urgent. What could possibly be the matter? Claudia held her ground, her back straight, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. I know the truth, Sloane. About Mara, about Victor, about everything. For a heartbeat, Sloane's perfect facade held. But then Claudia pulled out her phone, and the recording played into the night air. Victor's laugh. Sloane's icy confession. The sound echoed like thunder across the rooftop. Sloane's smile faltered. Her eyes hardened, her mask cracking under the weight of exposure. You foolish old woman, she spat, her voice laced with venom. Do you think anyone will believe you? Do you think Adrian will choose her? Her lip curled with disgust. Over me? Her composure crumbled further. Rage took over. She lunged at Claudia, her hand shoving, her body forcing the older woman dangerously close to the terrace edge. Claudia stumbled, her shoes scraping against the stone, but she stood her ground, even as her heart pounded with fear. And then Adrian appeared. Enough. His voice boomed like a verdict, his eyes red with unshed tears, locked on Sloane. For the first time, she saw not admiration in them, not trust, but disgust. Claudia, shaking, handed him the phone. See for yourself, Adrian. Adrian pressed play. He listened in silence, every word carving deeper into him. His face remained stone, but his hands trembled. Each second of that recording stripped away the illusion he had clung to. The woman he had brought into his life after Mara's death, the woman he thought was a companion, a savior, was nothing more than a murderer in disguise. The world around him seemed to collapse. But in that collapse, chains shattered too. For the first time in years, Adrian Sterling was no longer a prisoner of lies. The police were called. The next morning, chaos exploded across Manhattan. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, their cameras flashing like lightning. Headlines screamed from every newspaper. Future Mrs. Sterling arrested for murder conspiracy. Model and mogul's rival exposed in deadly plot. Sloane and Victor, desperate, had tried to flee. But they were caught at the airport, their glamorous masks stripped away as handcuffs clamped around their wrists. The same papers that once praised their beauty and power now splashed their disgrace across front pages. Adrian watched from a distance, his heart heavy but resolute. Justice had begun to take its course. But justice in court could not heal the wounds in his soul. There was still one battle left, facing Maya. That evening, Adrian Sterling climbed the creaking stairs of Maya Delgado's modest apartment, Lily's tiny hand resting trustingly in his. His chest felt heavy, each step harder than the last. He had faced boardrooms filled with ruthless businessmen, but never had he been so terrified as he was now about to face the woman he had wronged, the woman who held his heart without even knowing it. The door opened. Maya stood there, her wide eyes shimmering with surprise and pain. She didn't move, didn't speak. For a moment, the silence between them seemed unbearable. "Maya," Adrian whispered, his voice stripped of arrogance. Before she could answer, Lily slipped past her and wrapped her small arms around Maya's waist. The little girl's face glowed with joy, and with her delicate hands she signed one simple, powerful word: family. Maya's tears blurred her vision. And then Adrian lifted his trembling hands. Slowly, clumsily, he signed, "I'm sorry." His fingers fumbled, his gestures uneven, but every movement was drenched in truth. Maya gasped softly, pressing her hands to her mouth. The man who once dismissed her now humbled himself in the language of her heart. Her tears fell freely. She opened her door wider. "Come in." Inside, the small apartment smelled faintly of herbs and clean laundry. On the worn couch sat an older woman, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes kind but distant. She looked up as Adrian entered, and Maya quickly signed to her mother. "This is Adrian, Lily's father." The woman's expression softened. She smiled warmly and signed back. "Welcome." Adrian blinked, stunned. His gaze shifted from Maya to her mother, realization dawning. "Your mother?" he whispered. Maya nodded. "She's deaf. That's why I learned to sign long before I ever met you or Lily. For her." Adrian's throat tightened. He turned to the older woman and, with all the effort of a man still learning, signed slowly. "Nice to meet you." The woman's eyes lit up with gratitude. She touched her chest and signed back. "Thank you." Adrian looked at Maya then, his voice thick with emotion. "You've carried so much, Maya, alone. Your work, your mother, your battles. And still you found room in your heart for Lily." He swallowed hard, then added, "Let me help. I can make sure your mother gets the best treatment, doctors, specialists, whatever she needs. She deserves it." "You deserve it." Maya's lips parted, her heart caught between gratitude and disbelief. "Adrian, you don't have to. I want to." He cut in gently. His eyes met hers, steady and raw. "Not because I pity you, but because I want to share your burdens. I don't want you to fight alone anymore." Maya's breath trembled. Her walls, built so carefully from years of struggle, finally began to crumble. She saw not the cold billionaire who once humiliated her, but a man transformed, humbled by loss, soft by love, ready to give instead of take. Her tears spilled faster now, but her smile broke through them. And in that quiet, intimate space, Adrian stepped closer. His hand rose tentatively to her cheek, pausing for her permission. Maya closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Their lips met gentle at first, then deeper, carrying all the weight of pain, forgiveness, and new beginnings. It was not just a kiss. It was a vow. Behind them, Lily clapped her hands together with joy, while Maya's mother smiled knowingly, her eyes shining with peace. Outside, Manhattan's restless lights blinked on. Taxis rushed down crowded avenues, and the city's noise thundered without pause. But in that modest apartment, time stopped. The man who had lost everything found redemption in love. The woman who had endured humiliation discovered her dignity was her crown. And the child who had grown in silence united them all with the purity of her hands. Together, at last, they had become what Lily had signed from the very beginning: family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives like this. Thank you for watching.